I'm going to start with the slide that I normally explain in words, and it's what I like to call the islands of Wi-Fi. And I'll explain that from two different perspectives. And if you're craning to see, that's the islands in Dubai, so is where it's from. So with the islands of Wi-Fi, I think there's two things. First of all, from a technology perspective, and then from a coverage perspective. So historically, and I'll speak predominantly from a South African context, there haven't really been Wi-Fi networks. There's been collections of Wi-Fi hotspots. And there's an important distinction between that, because when you're operating a collection of disparate internet hotspots, you're not able to offer differentiated services. You're only able to offer a linear internet service over those. So that's the first one, is when you have internet hotspots, you really don't have a network. You have a collection of islands that are these individual internet hotspots. The second one is, when we speak from a network layer perspective, is when you have multiple different operators, you also create these islands that consumers aren't able to co-survive on. So historically, in the South African context, many of the logos were referenced in Tim's presentation. You had organizations like Always On, MWeb, Skyrove, HipZone, Wireless G, or G Connect, same company, Vodacom, MTN, and a service that was meant to benefit consumers, being a price that is cheap by the meg, by the gig, turned out to be effectively expensive, because you would go to one location that would be dominated by one organization. You may purchase a product that you may be a few cents per meg, but when you went to the next location, it wasn't a transportable product with you. So you kind of got left high and dry on your island by not being able to reuse it on somebody else's island. And with that departure point is really where Vast Networks was born out of, was to try create a ubiquitous layer underneath that any SP, any organization per se, not necessarily even a tech company, could be able to offer a Wi-Fi product that the consumer got to use on the same basis each and every single place they went to. I think we're very familiar with this in the fiber market within South Africa. Open access fiber, and you get to choose and select who your service provider is. And with that in mind, all those companies that I've just mentioned, Always On, MWeb, Jenny Internet, Vodacom, G Connect, they're actually customers on this network. So their customer now can actually use that product wherever they go that they found our footprint. I think the other important distinction is this model was in a hybrid mode before. So one of our customers, Always On, used to be in the infrastructure business. And in order to virtualize other customers using theirs, you would have to go through a complicated user journey and become an Always On user to use, let's say, your G Connect credentials at an Always On zone. How we offer the network is you create the experience to how you want to use it. So think about it in old web terms, number of clicks to satisfaction. So there's a pure VNO model. So many of you probably have seen an Always On offering within the market. That is actually our infrastructure underpinning it. So they don't roll out infrastructure. They concentrate on the virtualized service provider layer to the consumer. How they want to offer that, the user journey, the experience, the way that you onboard the customer, fully up to them. They control that, and from the public's perspective, you don't see a difference. It appears as if they own the network, they run the network, it's their network. Then there's a shared environment, and the shared environment is really born out of, although Michael and co from the manufacturers will tell you you can run infinitum SSIDs, we also want to focus on quality of service, and we don't believe that that's sustainable to run an infinitum amount of them. So we also don't want to limit the amount of people that can play within the network down to a single handful of them. So we have a shared SSID, and on that you'll find all the same providers. The only difference to having your own SSID would be you now have that one click to satisfaction. The moment you select an MWeb logo or G Connect logo, you're redirected to the subscriber management platforms, the experience, the user journey of those customers. So hopefully that explains a little bit about how we see the islands. And then why do we see the need for a Wi-Fi network? Many of us speak around the GSM pricing. And how we see Wi-Fi is, if we do the comparative to GSM, here's the figures. And these are pulled off the operator statistics over the week, operators' websites over the weekend. If you're on a postpaid contract, a Wi-Fi, a 3G or a 4G bundle is 149 Rand for a gig, which works out at around 15 South African cents per meg. And your out-of-bundle charge, so if you use more than that 1 gig, is over 2 Rand or around 2 Rand per meg. You generally have to commit to a 24-month contract. And as we know, in this country, the number of postpaid contracts versus prepaid is probably less than 10%. To Michael's point, you haven't seen very aggressive prepaid contracts. If we have a look at the prepaid, depending on what you commit yourself to on a prepaid, it's from around 60 cents up to 2 Rand a megabyte. How Wi-Fi plays into that from a price perspective is, and this I base on our customer prices, because please understand, VAST does not offer retail services direct to the consumer. We're the infrastructural layer. So using our customers as the benchmark, if you made a 20 gig commit on a bundle, and it's not based on a month, it's a bundle of data that you can use over an extended period, it's less than 1 South African cents per megabyte. So now you compare that through to the GSM, and then it's an ad hoc purchase. You don't have to commit to a 24-month period. You can buy it when and if you want. If you want to go to a pay-as-you-go model, i.e. I have 5 Rand in my pocket, what can I buy? Prices range from around 6 cents up to around 50 cents. So if we go back to the need of broadband penetration within Africa, and specifically South Africa, if we think about people that really need access to data that have never had it, it's people that have an affordability issue. And it's ironic that we gouge in the poor actually at the benefit of those that can afford to get the better pricing. So Wi-Fi from an accessibility perspective really plays into affordable broadband to be used by consumers. Again, we don't prescribe what people should offer out, how people should offer it. We provide the technology layer that enables that. And I think very soon we'll see non-linear or non-traditional ways of selling, because the traditional model is emulating the GSM industry. It's selling a per meg, per gig. Why aren't we seeing access-related packages? So why is there not an access package for me to get uncapped Netflix access during a month, or a social media package valid for 7 days? Because what we need to understand is that the lower tiers of the market, and I'm sure James will elaborate on this, is the concept of gigs or megs doesn't translate into what does that really mean for me. Do I get 1 minute Facebook with that meg? Do I get 10 minutes Facebook? Does that mean I can view how many people on Instagram? So we need to look at non-traditional and non-linear ways on doing that. Now, the way to do that, I'll go back, is through the islands. So if you're operating a disparate set of internet hotspots, you're not able to actually differentiate those services. So what VAST has gone and done is in the center of our network, in contrast to how services are emerging abroad, we've actually put all the intelligence into the center of the network, and we've created a layer 2 network that faces inwards, that then we can do different things with the traffic. So now you can peer. You can peer not just for the case of traditional internet peering, but you could peer with an educational service. So you can offer an on-net, low-cost educational service. You can peer with perhaps a VoIP service, a minutes service, where now you're not consuming an internet per meg per gig, but you're actually consuming the service as an on-net or a LAN type service. Tim spent a lot of time in his presentation speaking around FTTH. And FTTH, South Africa is playing a catch-up game. I think Africa in general is far ahead of what South Africa is from that perspective. It's a very recent development in the last 2 to 3 years. It's predominantly focused on highly urbanized and traditionally wealthy areas, because that's where people see the captive market for 1,000 Rand per month service. What about if you live in those areas as shown below? What about if you live in the middle of Hillbrow, or you live in Alexandra Township, or you live in Diepsloot, or you live in Katlehong, and maybe I'm in a formal apartment block, maybe I'm in an informal dwelling that I live in. Why don't I have that same access of FTTH product? Michael showed an excerpt of the quote of a shebeen or a tavern, if you don't know what a shebeen is, in Diepsloot, where the owner was speaking around the impact of internet services to his business, to his life. And my CTO and I were there in December when the service went live. And the reaction from people that were using the internet there, and you saw the speed tests, and Michael was obviously there on a bad day because they're as high as 200 megabit per second in an informal settlement, was, are you telling me that I have better internet than the fancy white people in Stain City, which is probably the most expensive neighborhood emerging in this country currently, where you apparently have to be a billionaire? we're delivering what we like to call Wi-Fi to the home. So just because I live in this informal settlement, or I live in an informal dwelling, or I live in a highly congested, congregated area where traditional models don't work, doesn't mean I don't want to access the internet to research a dissertation I may be studying for. It doesn't mean that I don't want to access Netflix or keep up to date with my social media or do my porn or do my torrenting or do whatever else you want on that. It's just the delivery medium is changing. So think of Wi-Fi now as a true last mile service going through to the home. Again, we provide the infrastructural layer, we provide the footprint, and it's up to our customers, and customers can be anybody, because a customer could be an SP, like an Always On, or a Vodacom, or Vodacom MNO. It could be an MNO. You could be a brand. You could be a brand that wants to reward your loyal, imagine a soap promotion. Buy 10 soaps within a month and get 100 meg free, because the economic value of that is immense to the person getting it. The model that we've developed for predominantly for these types of areas is also on a different basis. There is a user pay, so the traditional model, you sign up with an SP, you buy, but we also have created a digital content portal that people in these environments can participate without having to take money out of their pockets. And that's for a number of reasons. You may be living in this environment, and let's say for argument's sake, you've traditionally spent 10 Rand a month on GSM data, and that gives you a certain allocation of megs. You could potentially spend 5 Rand a month now on a blend of GSM and Wi-Fi data. You'd still need GSM because Wi-Fi will never be ubiquitous like GSM is, but you would end up with quantums more data available to you. You may have just been out of that affordability range of GSM data. You could take a Rand out your pocket now and get some Wi-Fi data. But what about 80% of the population of these environments that taking a Rand out of your pocket means which meal of the day should I forego to get Wi-Fi data? Why do people not have the right to be part of a digital world, a digital ecosystem? So what we've built is a system where you can keep up to date with news, sports, lifestyle, job applications. So you seek a job. We provide access for free in a lot of these environments as well, because if you've never had the internet, how do you know what this cool Wi-Fi machine that Vast has come and built is? So internet, if you've never used it, we just all assume everybody knows what the internet is. It's still a communication around what is this, what does it do for my life? And I think a lot of the drivers are stuff like I am around it. Those of you that don't know Vast, I'll throw out some numbers because I was chatting to Tim in the break. There's disparate ways of understanding who's got the biggest network or who's got what network, and people quote hotspots and mix that up with AP. So I've given you 3 numbers. We're in more than 2,000 locations. So location for us could be a shopping mall that's 150,000 square meters. That's a location. It could be in a coffee shop. That's a location. We have more than 30,000 access points live in our network today. And this comes with some unique challenges that the vendors have faced with us, because, again, I don't think it was conceptualized that somebody would go roll out a nationwide network. And I think in the States we've seen this with some of the operators. Within Europe, it's not as prevalent. But, again, the challenges that faced with this, the manufacturers didn't build a system that would scale to that. We find in challenges in various places with this. And then 10 million. So what does the 10 million represent? So 2,000 locations, 30,000 access points. What does that really mean? I can quote numbers of however many hotspots I have, but what does that really mean? It translates into around 10 million square meters of usable Wi-Fi space within our network. And our network is predominantly built in high-density trafficked areas. So from a shopping mall, through to railway, through to airports, through to townships, also where you have a high dwell time, so something like a hospital, a hotel, and generally if you can get the convergence of both, you have a great business, because obviously then you have lots of people staying on it for a lot of the time. We don't have a pray and spray, so we're not deploying this on the back of another service that we build this into. So we're not deploying POS terminals that we build this into. It's building the network where we would expect people to find it. We're not building this in just randomized places, for instance, like people's homes. that you would then expect people to do it. Rather, we go into high-density residential and doing that. And a number of the people that have been spoken about today are our customers without people knowing. So if you're an international user, you're an AT&T user, you're roaming on our network without you knowing it, seamless to yourself. If you're an iPass, Boingo, Fon user, you're roaming on our network without you using it yourself. And that's really why Vast isn't well known, is we're just the infrastructure. We want to be sure that the service that you get, and a question was asked by a gentleman in the morning, so you have all of these different networks, what is the end user experience? What is the service that you get? I challenge you to use one of our locations and decide for yourself what is that true service that you get, because we have gigabits of internet breakout sitting behind it. We have cache-in with accelerators for pre-rendering pages down to, I don't want to be rude, but a dumb phone style device where you can take out certain of the stuff from a page. Think of Opera Mini, sort of the same thing to it. We operate central gateways that we can then turn traffic different ways and handle traffic in different manners. And I think really a different departure point from what we've seen in the market before. And to be clear, we inherited a pre-existing network, so we were born out of two previous networks that we fundamentally have re-architected into how we see the future of Wi-Fi being supported within this country. And with that, any questions?
Any questions for Grant? Great presentation. Thank you so much. There's one there from John.
So in context of your question, we have around 10 customers because the end user is not my customer. So if you're a customer of Always On, you would count as their subscriber. We don't have a view to that because, again, we're the transparent layer between it. So we don't interrupt their traffic flow. We don't sit in between them and their customer. That's up to them to do. How many customers, the collective of our different clients would have.
So some of the customers, so it's like around about 10 or 12 always on type providers that you are running this infrastructure
at this stage.
For. And it's not a layer 2 breakout. You're providing the bandwidth and traffic and everything for them as well.
So we provide an end-to-end service on any manner possible. So there's an organization in this room that we're talking to that want it as a layer 2 service. It'll be a pure virtualized. So we're not able to do a layer 2 on the shared SSID because there's customers sitting there that are layer 3 customers. But on a pure virtual, your own SSID, etc., it can be a layer 2 service. There's just to be clear, because often people think I have my own breakout. It's going to be substantially better price if I add my own breakout to this. The cost of running a Wi-Fi network, although bandwidth is expensive in this country relative to other markets, as an input cost, it's relatively low to running the network itself.
Question. Lots of questions. Let's take them in order. There's a gentleman there. Sorry. We'll get to you, John, in just a second.
Quick question. How much bandwidth are people using on your network on a daily basis?
So again, we don't monitor individual users. That's for our customers to monitor.
But how much is that?
The average use that they have per customer. We know what in aggregate our customers are doing, and that's confidential. So business confidential. Sorry.
There's a question here. Yeah, and then John. Sorry. Go ahead.
You benchmarked fiber to home to a cost of 800 rand per month, but you didn't benchmark Wi-Fi to the house.
So in benchmarking the fiber to the home, that's what a entry level package would be on a general fiber to the home type. So it wasn't really a benchmarking, just an indicative pricing. Again, that retail price that is paid by the end user is paid to one of our customers. So we provide the access to the locations for our customers to virtualize it. I would assume it would be similar, if not cheaper. What you need to do is equate fixed LTE and mobile LTE to fixed Wi-Fi and mobile Wi-Fi. So you might live in an apartment where we have coverage. You may purchase a fixed Wi-Fi package to consume in your apartment, and then you may purchase a mobility solution to consume wherever you may be within our coverage. But again, the pricing, we're not prescriptive. Our customers can sell it whatever they want to. How they want to go to market is however they want to.
John, go ahead.
Thanks, Grant. I'm happy to hear from you because I first heard about Vast in the Wi-Fi Now London. And we're doing something similar in Uganda. We are going that we want to go to make sure we close down on one SSID, but then deliver over the captive portal. Now, and I hope that you will be available to help, because the number of questions that I have here, but then anything that will be outstanding, I hope you will be available to a follow-up. Just offline follow-up.
Are you here the rest of the day?
So I'm leaving just after lunch, but I have an extensive contingent of colleagues here, and some that are far more technically capable than I am. That probably your questions are probably aimed to.
Okay.
But
let me just run through just 4 questions.
Oh my God.
One, and I'll just run through at once, and then you can pick out any that you could answer. One is, are you plugging into any existing networks like hotel or public area networks?
Sorry?
Are you plugging into any existing networks? Say you find this network and plug in?
We are very anti using other people's network to deliver our service. And I'll give you a use case. There is a collection of locations in this country where we are obligated to use the venue's equipment. It's unfortunately where people have the biggest negative experience around using public Wi-Fi in South Africa. And we have zero influence over any QoS. We hand over at the router to somebody else's network. We don't have any control over the latency on the LAN, on the density of APs, on the layout, etc. And that's a very important fact for us, because these locations are probably operating at a density of 20% of what we would operate at, based on the volume of people that are going through it. So we're very reticent to do that. Where we do deploy in hotels, etc., it's our infrastructure that we provide there, and we manage our own infrastructure.
I'm afraid I'm really nervous that you have 2 more questions.
Yes.
Can you keep them to the panel, because we're going to just remember your questions. We're going to bring Grant back. I think Grant has graciously accepted to be a part of our panel a little bit later, so you can ask them there. Please hang on to them, all right? Because I know you have more. All right, a little bit later. Just
maybe one. Okay. Okay, one
How can I
question
resist?
on
One
legal
more.
intercept.
John, you get one more.
I think a petition on government and legal intercept, especially in the space that you're operating
Government
in.
legal intercept.
How is that being handled in South Africa in case it happens?
So I'm not going to speak to how it's handled, because there's legislation that you can go read up on what the requirements are for that. Needless to say, we comply with the legal intercept requirements that are required. And our downstream customers have to also comply with any legal and identification of end users. That is, but again, as them operating the retail service, they are bound by statutory obligations around that.
Very good questions. Keep the rest of them. We're going to bring Grant back for the panel. And Grant, thank you so much for all the insights. Thank you so much.